morning. Welcome those who are worshiping here at Central Campus. Welcome those who are worshiping at Pleasant View and in the chapel this morning. We love you and are so thankful that you all are also part of the Alive community. What a tremendous honor today it is for me to have Pete Benson with us. And let me just basically tell Pete, please come join me, brother. I just want to share how Pete got here. So Pete and I serve on a mutual board together, and I struck up a conversation. I'm going to be very honest with you, because I didn't know Pete in that moment, or before that moment, and then I heard, well, he's the guy when it comes to money, which I guess that's how you got on that board. But anyway, he's the guy when it comes to money. And so we struck up a conversation, and I said, hey, Pete, because Lisa and I were having a question related to our finances. And I asked him that question when I said, hey, what do you think about this? And he gave me some advice, and then he gave me this book. And it was his new book, and I took it and read it cover to cover. And the reason I read it cover to cover is this. This is a book that I could understand. It's not so many financial theory things that I can't figure out in markets. This is one that I could take. I read this chapter, and here's what I should do. And so when we started thinking about the finance series, I wondered if there was a chance I could get Pete to come. I didn't know what a big deal he was. And so I didn't know not to ask. And so I just asked. And if you want to know who Pete Benson is, you can look him up online. You can see all the different networks he's been a part of and all the different things he's looked to in corporations and in corporate America. But what you need to know is he's here because he helped Lisa and I in our finances through this book. And so today, we were here last night. Today you have an opportunity. I cannot express enough how important it would be for you to be part of that. So one thing I've learned about finances from you is this. In every relationship, there's one person who carries a notebook in their pocket.
Yes.
And there's one person who spends. And so in our home, Lisa's the notebook carrier and I am the spender. So that's kind of how it is in this. So look at all the elbows. Look at all the looks that are taking place around here. You've already got a hole to dig out of. So anyway, that's Pete. His wife was supposed to be with us, but she's caring for her mom. She lost her dad a few weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, and now her mom's sort of taking a turn for the worst. And so we want to pray for her this morning. As Pete shares, he kind of shares with that in the back of his mind, as speaking always is. There's something going on in the main level, and there's something going on in our hearts. And so I want you to welcome Pete in a minute, but let's have a word of prayer for him, and then we'll get started. Lord, thank you so much for my brother. Thank you for who he is. Thank you for his faithfulness to you. Lord, I think my heart beats with his heart because of his love for the local church, and to know that he was a church planter at one time, it just marries my heart to his, and I'm grateful for that, Lord. I'm grateful for what he knows. I'm grateful for how he uses what he knows to bring you the greatest amount of glory possible. Dear Lord, I do lift his wife to you right now as she's caring for her mom, and she's caring for her mom with a grieving heart already. And so, Lord, through the power of these prayers in this room, we ask that you would have mercy. Through the power of the prayers in the chapel and on our campus this morning, we just ask that you'd have mercy and that you would even now, by the power of your Spirit, give a special dose of strength and encouragement to her this morning. Lord, as Pete shares, use him, I pray. Use him in a mighty way. Give us open hearts. Give him open mind and open heart to share. May he sense the anointing on him, and may we receive it. Thank you, Lord, for him. Thank you for his faithfulness to you, and thank you that we have him here alive. It's in your wonderful name we pray. Amen. Lord, folks, would you welcome Pete Benson this morning?
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be alive at Alive Wesleyan today. Thank you for being here. We're drowning in information, but we're starved for wisdom. And I hope today that I'm able to impart some wisdom to you, because the financial situation in North America might be described as the best of times and the worst of times. Our unprecedented affluence has brought benefits that even the most cynical person would have to acknowledge. We are able to afford education, housing, extended communications, transportation to just about anywhere. We have health care, recreation opportunities, and options abound. Our food is plenteous. I read recently that more people die in the United States of too much food than too little. In the United States and Canada, we spend more on eating out than the individual gross national product of 95% of the nations and countries worldwide. Unfortunately, though, for every corresponding positive economic indicator, there is a dismal one. Our list of economic woes in this country is a very long list, not the least of which is that our governments, along with a large percentage of the citizens, are flat broke. The Wall Street economist Alfred Malaber explained, for a very long time we have been living beyond our means. For such a long time that now, sadly, it is beyond our means to put it right, at least in an orderly, reasonably painless manner. Personal debt has risen 77% just in the last 10 years. In fact, personal, corporate, national, and international debt levels are lofting through the stratosphere. Bankruptcies are at record levels. Scandal and greed rock the economic world at every turn. Healthcare costs and the cost of college education continues to spiral way out of control. Government spending on welfare and social programs has risen over 2,000% since 1960. Despite these tremendous liabilities, we have no more money to pay for it all. The federal government, state governments, and individual families are all swimming in the same red ink. It is clearly the best of times, yet the worst of times. And because of all that, my friends, we are more stressed, more counseled, more divorced, more debt-ridden than ever before. We are truly a generation under siege, and less than 5% of all North Americans have a written financial plan. Is it any wonder that money issues and financial struggles are the number one stressor in modern marriages today? Nearly 50% of marriages end up in divorce in the first 7 years, and the number one reason, when you uncover all the other issues, is something to do with money. You see, the issue is this: it's insane. We're thrown into this pressure of running a household, managing finances, paying bills, saving for retirement, keeping a small household or a large household where we're able to actually keep out of jail and go bankrupt with little or very little financial training at all. I mean, how much did you get in high school, in college, before today? I mean, how much training do we actually get? We get education on other things, but the average family, and it trickles all the way down from the government, has no financial education. Even as God followers, we're being duped. We are buying the lies. Instead of stemming the tide, we are drifting along with the crowd. And it's time to stand up today and say, enough. Enough of the insanity. It's not working. I'm going a different direction. You see, we say that God is enough, but we live and spend as if He isn't. And so today what I want to do is share several things that I need you to reject. We need to reject these things and embrace one of the last things I talk about. And so to begin the service, we talked about Matthew chapter 25. And the man went on a journey, and he entrusted his possessions to them. So if he entrusted his possessions, 5 bags of gold, 2 bags of gold, 1 bag of gold, whose possessions ultimately was it? It was the owner who went away and entrusted those to the manager. Now, for the point to be taken later, what's your name? Lenny. Lenny, come right up here, buddy. It's okay. I'm giving you my wallet. This is 1 bag of gold, not 2, not 5. I'm entrusting it to you, and you're right up on the front row where I can watch you. So hang on to that, okay? I'm watching you. You part of the security team or something? Keep that secure. Lenny. Keep an eye on Lenny during the service. So there's 3 big lies that I want you to learn to reject and begin to implement today. This is not just information. This is wisdom because it's from God's Word. Lie number 1, I don't have any money, therefore I don't need to learn about money. Let that sink in for a second. And see how much sense that makes. And yet, that's kind of what we think. Well, I don't know what I'm doing here today. He's talking about money. I don't have any money. Well, you of all people need to be up here with Lenny on the front row then. It's almost this strange idea. I don't have any money, therefore I don't need to learn about money. A lot of times people won't come to my seminars. Well, I don't have any money, so why would I want to go? Well, think about that. Maybe that's the reason you should be there. You see, talent, if you read it in the King James Version in this story, means bags of gold or bags of silver or money. This guy with the one talent said, I don't really have enough that I need to worry about. The guys, with 2 and 5, that's who he's talking about. But me, it's okay. I'll just hide my one talent. You see, the problem is we all picture ourselves, no matter what our economic plight is or situation in life, we all think that we're the one talent guy. Well, guess what? We're not. You know why? You can go to globalrichperson.com. Don't do it right now with your iPhones. globalrichperson.com, and you can look up who the richest people in the world are. And you'll find that in the United States of America, if you have a household income of $33,000 gross into your household, you're in the top 1% of the entire world. 99% of the world are looking up at you and saying, they're the 10-talent guys. They're all the wealthy people. If only I could go there. Do you know that there's 2 billion, with a B, 2 billion people living on the same planet as you that are your neighbors? They're part of our earth that live on less than $1 a day. So, $33,000 a year in household income puts you in the top 1% of the entire world. So I don't need to learn about money. I don't have enough for that. The facts are this, that if you actually did make $30,000 a year, when you first started at 20-something years old and you lived 60 years, you've been entrusted with $1.8 million in your lifetime. Is that enough to mess with? What if you make $50,000 and you live 60 years? That's $3 million that you've been entrusted with in your lifetime that the owner is saying, hey, this is my money. I'm entrusting it to you. You need to be a good steward of it. Would you think that then you need to learn about money? Absolutely, we do. Jesus made these comments. He said, if you're honest in the small things, you'll be honest in the big things. If you're a crook in the small things, you'll be a crook in the big things. If you're not honest in small jobs, who will put you in charge of the store? No worker can serve 2 bosses. He'll either hate the one and love the second, or adore the first and despise the second. You cannot serve both God and the bank. You see, maybe the reason we haven't been given more is because we haven't been a good steward with what we have. And there's a test there in place for us. If you aren't good with money practices in junior high and senior high and in college, how and where are you going to learn to be a good steward? Seriously, Jim Rohn, I said this last night, made this quote. He said, formal education can make you a living. Self-education can make you a fortune. You see, it's no good to sit there and say, well, they just didn't teach that in my junior high. They didn't teach that in my high school. I didn't get that in college. If it is to be, it is up to me. If it's your family, it's up to you. You need to do something about that. We've been given lots of great information. You can get online and you can research every bit of information that you need. You can buy that book. You can get Dave Ramsey's information. There's a multitude. You can pick up the Bible, the greatest resource on money ever made, 2,350 verses. 2,350 verses in total that have to do with money and possessions and what you need to be doing as a good steward with your possessions. 2,350. That's more than faith, prayer, heaven, and hell combined. There's lots of great information in there. We need to read it, and then you need to apply it. That's what we need to do. You see, ignorance is not an excuse. I got started very early being a person of responsibility, and that's a story for another day. But because of that, I had to learn how to control money. I had to learn about money at a very young age. As a teenager, I had to learn how to deal with money, how to get it, how to work for it, and then how to squeeze every possible bit out of it. And so I said, hey, my parents never taught me anything. My grandparents never taught me anything. I learned how to play badminton in high school. You know, that was really important, but they didn't teach me anything about money my entire life. And so I came out and I had to learn how to get money. Back then, you actually went to bookstores. You didn't get on Amazon. And so I found a bookstore and went into the money section. I bought a book about money. And by the time I was 30 years old, I'd already read 30 books about money to learn what I needed to do, because I had so little, I had to stretch it so far. So this lie of, I don't have any money, therefore I don't need to learn, it's just the opposite. If you don't have that much money, all the more you need to learn. And it's no good to just sit there and moan and groan and say, well, you know, they should have taught me that. My parents should have taught me that. I didn't get any of that either. If it is to be, it is up to me. You need to take the initiative, and you need to start doing that. If you're not good about it, then you need to learn more and more and more. You see, what you need to do, folks, is you need to figure out the habits of broke people and do just the opposite. Did you know that the average American today watches television for 35 hours a week? It reminds me of the old quote, poor people have big TVs, rich people have big libraries. Let that sink in for a second. See, you have the time to do whatever you want. You just don't make the time to learn about finances, and it's right there. By the way, if you can't control your money and you're not good with the little bit you have, having more is not going to solve your problems. By the time that they have retired, just 2 years, 78% of all former NFL football players have gone bankrupt or are under severe financial stress because of joblessness and divorce. I speak of people like Vince Young, Mike Tyson, Burt Reynolds, Michael Vick, Scottie Pippen, Tony Gwynn, Evander Holyfield, who were all entrusted with a lot of money that we'd like to get our hands on, and they went broke. Having more money and continuing to practice bad principles is not going to get you closer to the finish line, okay? So more money is not your problem. You need to learn the information, get wisdom, practice it, get discipline, all of those things. You see, it's all about how we manage what we've been entrusted with, and if we are faithful with the little bit that we're entrusted with, just maybe, we'll get more. So, lie number one we need to reject. I don't have enough money, therefore I don't need to learn about money. You of all people need to learn about money. Lie number two we need to reject, the one with the most toys wins. Oh, we hear that, we laugh about that, and we say, oh, that's just for the worldly people. No, we all live like that's the way it is. That's the way the game is played, that there's some kind of a competition, and that the one with the most toys wins. Rachel Cruz, who is Dave Ramsey's daughter, and their office is right around the corner from mine in Cool Springs, Tennessee. She's written a book recently, and it's entitled, Love Your Life, Not Theirs. We got to stop living life to satisfy somebody else. You see, we spend money we don't have on things we don't need to impress people who aren't paying attention. They don't care. They're too engrossed in their own situation. They're looking in their own mirror. They're not even looking at you. And so we buy things we can't afford to impress them. We need to live our own life under God, not theirs. For the most part, our culture in which we live is obsessed with stuff. We're in love with stuff, with materialism, and there's nothing wrong with stuff. It's falling in love with it and making bad financial decisions and not being a good steward. That's where the problem comes in. So how in the world did we get in that mess? Well, here's the answer. A screwed up mindset, if I can use that terminology. Others have it, so why shouldn't I? And why should I wait when I don't have to? And guess what? You don't have to. You don't have to wait. In America, we have this problem. Families' retirement accounts are underfunded, and every evening, local restaurants are overcrowded. You see, it should be the opposite. But that's the life we live. You know, you live in the real world, that's what you do, right? If you want to stay broke all the time and not be a good steward and not be able to give to other people, which is really what life is all about. I mean, that's ultimately what this is all about, to get to the place where we can do something that's amazing. People's savings are short, but the Starbucks line continues to be long. Will Rogers said, "We'll show the world we're prosperous even if we have to go broke to do it." And that's exactly what we're doing. But by gosh, I'm going to show the world that I'm prosperous even if I'm not. So how do we do that? Well, we buy now, we pay forever, and we do it on the Platinum Bank of Perpetual Payments credit card. It's that easy. They're everywhere. They send dozens of them in the mail every month. You see, debt is one of the few things in life that you can acquire without money. Think about that. The year is 1984. I'm married with a family of 5, and I need a car. What you do, this is what the world does, is they go out and you get a loan and you pay interest on that loan, and you end up paying more for the car in a depreciating asset than it's worth, and so you pay more. It's like you go into a store and they say, "Oh, yeah, this is $100, but we're going to ask you to pay $130, and oh, by the way, as soon as you go out the door, it's not going to be worth $50. And we do that every day. We're suckered in by that every day because that's what the world does. That's what you do in America. That's the American way. And I rejected that, and I looked at the interest, and I said, this is not right. I'm 25 years old. It's 1984, and I need a car. And I went out, and I scrounged up in my home somehow $800 to pay cash for that car. And I said, everyone else may get a loan, but I'm not going to. And I paid cash for a car that I could find and prayed for $800, and bought, for some of you who are younger, an orange AMC Hornet, 1972. Has a white roof. I'm telling you what, this would go well here in the Clemson area. Had the right color. But it was paid for. And what I did was I did what you have to do, right? I paid myself a payment for the next 2 years. That payment I would have had to pay, that the bank, I actually got a printout from the bank exactly what I need to pay. I started a special savings account. I put that money into that for the next 2 years. And when that car died, I had money in hand to upgrade to one that would cost $2,200 that I had saved up during that period of time. Bought the next one in cash. And this isn't to say, oh, you're just so good. But I am here to tell you that since 1984, at the age of 25 years old, I have always, to this day, paid cash for cars. Why? Because I decided that I wasn't going to be normal. I am abnormal, and I'm okay with that because I can pay cash for cars. I think that's good to be abnormal to do, and you can too, but most of you won't. Because we got to have this air of, oh, we're respectable, and they know I got a degree from such and such, and I work for this company. And so, after all, we got to show people what we've got when we really don't have it. John Ortberg has written a book recently, and it says, when the game is over, it all goes back in the box. There's nothing to impress anything with, because when the game is over, it all goes back in the box, and we came into this world with nothing, and we will take absolutely nothing away from it. The one with the most toys just leaves more toys behind. Somebody asked at Rockefeller's funeral, I wonder how much he left, and the other lady looked at her and said, he left it all. That's exactly what he did. The one with the most toys doesn't win. For we brought nothing into this world, and we'll take nothing out of it. Lie number 3 that we need to reject. If I give 10%, that's what I'm taught in church. If I give 10%, I can do whatever I want with the other 90%. I just need to be exactly what God wants me to be with that 10%, and that's what the Bible teaches, and I'm good to go with the other 90%. If there's a lot left over, by golly, that's mine, because I am doing what the Bible asks me to do. Now, let me ask you a question. Back to that story again. The guy entrusted each one with 1 bag of gold, money, another with 2 bags of gold, and 3 bags of gold. Did he come back to the servants and say, oh, I gave you 1 bag of gold. All I need back is 10% of that bag of gold, and you can keep the other 90%? Or did he say, it's all mine? Did he go to the guy with 2 bags and say, all I need you to do is keep 90% of those 2 bags of gold and give me the other 10%? Was that all he said? No, he said, I want all of them back. When I went to Lenny and said, I entrust you with my wallet, my 1 bag of gold, did I say to Lenny, now help me out here, did I say to Lenny, Lenny, you only need to give me back 10% and you can keep 90% of what's in there? No, I said, Lenny, I need all of this back. I need it to be entrusted. You see, it's always God's. If we belong to Him, all of it always belongs to Him. Lenny, I'll take my wallet back, buddy. Come on now. I've been watching you. Wait now, hey, wait, that's his wallet. No, I don't want your wallet, man. He's smooth right there. Give him a hand. That's awesome. I do that all the time, and nobody's done that, Lenny. And you're part of the security team? Lie number 3, if I give 10%, I can do whatever I want with 90%. You know what? God saved my life as a young teenager when my life was already over before it had already begun, and I owe Him everything. He didn't just give me part, He gave me all. He gave me it all, and when I gave my life to Him, I gave all of it to Him. Not at that time knowing what my life would become today. After a long time, it said the master of those servants returned and he settled accounts with them. He settled accounts with them on everything that he had been entrusted with, every single dollar, not just 10%. The tithe is a wonderful place to start, but it's a horrible place to stop. Someone said, should I tithe on the gross or the net? And my response is this, well, do you want to be grossly blessed or netly blessed? It's up to you. You have a choice. The motto of the story is this, it's all His. When we belong to Him, everything belongs to Him. We will give account of everything about our life, time, talent, treasure, everything we have. Now, there's 5 categories of giving, and I don't have long to go on this, but this is worth the price of admission. Number 1, we start at the bottom, which is called a random tipper. There are people all over the world that call themselves followers of God that are content with just being a random tipper. And then you elevate to the next level is what we call a regular contributor. You become not just random, but now you become a regular contributor. That's good. It's not great, but it's good. And then thirdly, you raise up to what I call a resolute tither. That's that person who is going to spend 45 minutes on Saturday night figuring out to the very penny. They wouldn't want to give over exactly what they need to give in tithe, but they're going to be a resolute tither. They're never going to miss. It's never going to be a penny over. It's never going to be a penny under. They're a resolute tither. Then you graduate to what I call a radical giver. And oh, that's when it becomes fun, when all of a sudden you graduate beyond there and you just realize that you just can't outgive God and you want to give more and more. And then when you really get crazy, you go to the 5th and the final rung, and that is ridiculously generous. I'm working on that one. I got a long ways to go, but I'm working hard. I'd like to get there before I die. Let me ask you about God. Is God a random tipper? Is He a regular contributor? Or is God ridiculously generous to us? He doesn't hold back. He's ridiculously generous, and you know what? I'm working very, very hard and praying and asking God to help me that I can be ridiculously generous back to him and to his kingdom every single day. For God so loved the world, he gave. He gave everything for us. We can't outgive God. He gave everything. He gave his very life. We are most like Jesus when we take what the world worshipped and we generously sow it into his kingdom. That's when we're most like God. Because he is a God of giving, we're most like him when we give. Proverbs 22:9, a generous man will himself be blessed because he shares his food with the poor. You see, the world is focused on radical consumption, and God calls us to radical contribution. So what is my point today? My point is this: the stakes have never, ever been higher. The stakes are for you and your family and your children and your brother and sister and your family and the people of this community and the people around this church. The stakes are that those who would want to tear down and those who would want to bring down are giving everything they've got. The stakes are high. Read this book sometime by Gabe Lyons, who goes to my church, called Good Faith, Being a Christian When Society Thinks You're Irrelevant and Extreme. And I'm here to tell you, it'll wake you up. The stakes have never been higher. But here's our problem. We haven't really bought into the idea that the stakes are life and death, that it's people's lives. We're afraid to call people to radical contribution and discipleship because it might turn them off. If we just ask them for a little, then maybe they'll come our way. But God is saying, give it all. God is calling us to a life of radical giving and ridiculous generosity. And I'm telling you, the more you get closer to that line, the more full your life gets. It's the best thing on earth. In 1 Timothy 6:17 and 19, it talks about all that. And then it says, so that they may take hold of that life that is truly life. I want to take a hold of that. God actually lets me participate in that. He lets me do it when I don't really need to. Now, I have several life coaches in life because I need a lot of coaching. And one of my life coaches is a guy by the name of Eason, which most of you have never heard. Eason played in the NFL for a few years, and now he is a communications coach, another type of coach that you can get out there like a Tony Robbins and that kind of thing. And he tells the story about this guy called Jerry Rice. Y'all have football around here, don't you, in this area? Okay, yeah, I thought so. Anyone ever heard tell of Jerry Rice? Eason played 4 years with the Houston, whoever they were called, Oilers back then in the NFL. And then later on in his career, he was traded to the San Francisco 49ers. That's the team that Jerry Rice played for. Now, if you're not familiar with Jerry Rice, he just happens to be arguably, you may not agree, arguably the greatest football player to have ever played the game. Why? Because in the position that he played as receiver, he was by far the best, and the second place person, get this, seriously, the second place person is 60 touchdowns behind him. No other position in football is there one person so radically ahead of everybody else. Jerry Rice, arguably the best football player to have ever played. And so Eason gets traded to his team. Now, one thing about Eason is he wasn't the most talented person in the world, but he did get to the NFL. And he said, one of the ways that I got there is I made a contract to myself early on as a young child that if I was going to play football, I would always be the first to the field for practice and the last one to leave. And he had always done that for 18 years. And so he gets traded to the San Francisco 49ers, and he gets to the first practice, and sure enough, it's preseason. He goes to the locker room. Nobody's around. He gets dressed. He goes out. It's 90 minutes before practice, and he's there on the practice field, and he looks out at the field, and he said, yep, same as always. And then he looked over here. And guess who he saw? Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice had beaten him to the practice field that day. He had never experienced that in his entire life, to have someone beat him, and there was Jerry Rice. Now, it would probably make sense that some of the lesser players that were actually trying to battle to get on the team might be there first. But no, it was Jerry Rice. And so they do their thing for about an hour and a half, and all of a sudden the rest of the team shows up. Guys like Joe Montana, Steve Young, Randy Cross, pretty good football players. And they all show up, and so it's preseason, it's warm-up, and they're going to go through some things to just kind of get warmed up. So Joe Montana is the quarterback, and he gets up over here, and he's actually going to throw balls to the receivers. And so Jerry Rice is back here, and there's a line of receivers that are going to actually catch the ball. And so what happens is Joe Montana's over there. He's getting ready to pass the ball, and the receivers are over here. And the first guy, sure enough, he's just going to do a little slant pattern, and he comes out like this, slants across, catches the ball, stops, walks it over to Joe Montana, gets back in line. Next guy gets ready, little slant pattern, moves out, cuts across, catches the ball, hands it off to Joe Montana. And then Bo says, it's Jerry Rice's turn. Oh yeah, he says, I got to see this. Jerry Rice looks over at Joe Montana. Boom! And he comes out, bam, catches the ball, runs full speed sprint 100 yards towards the end zone. Gets down, turns around, runs full speed sprint all the way back to Joe Montana, hands him the ball. Gets back in line. Next guy's up. He gets ready, comes out, catches the ball, hands it back to Joe Montana, gets back in line. Pretty soon it's Jerry Rice again. Jerry Rice, boom, 100 yards, full sprint all the way to the end zone, turns around, 100 yards all the way back for 3 hours. He did that. Again and again and again and again. And Bo said, I think he must have run 10 miles that day in practice. He said, I'm sure that if we were on the freeway on a bus, he would have found some way to run full speed. He did that all practice long. At the end of practice, Bo goes up to him, and they're the last two, of course, on the field, Tom. He goes back and he says, Joe, he says, what's all that? All that running, full speed, sprints, all practice. Jerry Rice looked back at Bo and he said this. He said, you got to understand something, Bo. He said, whenever these hands touch a ball, this body ends up in an end zone. See, there's never an accident. There's never an accident. He gave everything. He was so generous to the owners, to the coaches, to the players of the team. Do you think he was ridiculously generous with his talents? Absolutely. While the rest of the players that we have never heard tell of their names as receivers are content to just kind of wander down the field, do their little thing, because that's what everybody does in preseason. Everybody but the greatest player to have ever played. And here's our problem, folks. The enemy that is out to have the souls of people in this county are going at the game like Jerry Rice. And too often, and I don't know you, and I'm not here to judge, but too often in churches today, we're content to just jog through, go through the motions, do a little practice. It's okay, I've done my thing. And God is calling us to live and to be radically and ridiculously generous. I'm not just talking about money. Some of you don't have the ability right now to just give gigantic amounts of money. You start with a little bit. You know what's really cool? Is my mother, who died just 2 years ago, never had much of this world's goods, but she was one of the most generously, I'm not there yet, but she was the ridiculously generous in her, not quite poverty, but it wasn't much. And what's cool is she had no idea that this little punk kid that watched her every Sunday morning reach up in a special place and get money and put it into an envelope and gave it to church. And I can close my eyes and envision it right now. And as I learned that from her, little did she know that she had a son coming up, and I'm not the most wealthy person in the world, but that one, I would learn that principle from her. And even though she had the ability to give little, she was the one talent, she had no idea that God would somehow allow her son to be a 5-talent guy and give much. But you see, I wouldn't have gotten that principle if I didn't learn it from her. You see how important it is to just do your part, because you have no idea the impact you're having on other people and what that's going to mean. So, God calls us to be ridiculously generous. I hope you hear the call. I hope you answer the call. I hope that you will say to yourself right now, as I pray this final prayer, that you will say to yourself, God, work in me to reject these lies and embrace radical giving and ridiculous generosity in my life. God, thank you so much for all your blessings. Thank you for these people. Thank you for their heart to be here early on a Sunday morning. And God, I pray that they would hear your call right now, to be ridiculously generous in whatever capacity they are able to be. Help them answer the call. Help them to say, yes. God, I don't know what that means, but God, yes. The answer is yes. You got all of me. I'm going to reject the world's way. I'm going to do what the Word says. I'm going to live my life that way. It's amazing what God's going to do. Thank you so much for being here. God bless you. Amen.